let's start with kind of those two things, the importance of the gospel and the importance of nuance before we get into some of the more details. So I realize this is a loaded question, but can you talk a little bit about why and how the gospel should permeate our thoughts and conversations, obviously about everything, but, we're talking about race right now.
I think it helps us to have an internal perspective in our conversations about race, because it can be really easy to get myopic, and it can be easy to put our identity in things that are not the gospel. And so as an American Christian, when we're talking about race and justice, if I have my identity in being American, or if I have my identity in being a white person, or if I have my identity in being a good person, then it becomes really difficult to have conversations about race, because all of those things kind of get bombarded in that conversation. But if my identity is in Christ, if my identity is in his finished work, then regardless of what kind of discovery has happened in the conversation, my identity remains unshaken. And that's something that I experienced as a Black woman growing up in white evangelical culture. There were so many times where I felt like my identity as a Black woman was kind of, I wasn't able to kind of like marry it to my identity as being a Christian. Like, it was something that people wanted me to just, last night I saw a friend that I hadn't seen in 8 years. We've been friends for about 15 years, and we're kind of around similar surroundings back in the day. And she's like, "Hey, do you still talk to?" And she mentioned some folks that have stopped talking to me since I started talking about race and justice. And I was like, "No." And she said, "What happened?" And I was like, "They found out that I was Black, and they decided that they didn't want." And she was like, "What?" But it was, as long as it was something that I didn't talk about, or that I didn't bring up, or that I didn't, and I feel like that comes from an insecurity in our identity in Jesus, where our other identities just kind of like become more important and kind of cloud our focus and our ability to, number one, appreciate the other things that God has put into us, but then also, number two, keep them in proper perspective.
Yes. So you're saying that, when we have our identity in Christ first in the gospel, that frees us to be able to have tough conversations, to love people, to care, and not to be so defensive or tied to our own view. That makes so much sense.